Hello, my name is Greg Massi, and this is The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. No episode number this week because, unfortunately, I don't have an interview for you this week. And if you have been listening, you may have noticed there was a lack of interviews for the last month or so. I apologize for that. Things have been pretty crazy around here, and I ran out of interviews that I had backlogged and, kept at the ready for when things got busy. So, new episodes are going to be coming soon, and I will have more information on that for you soon. But for the next couple of months or so, I'm going to probably be doing some classic episodes just for the benefit of maybe a new listener who hasn't gone back and listened to the old ones yet. And I'll probably do some new commentary on them at the beginning. So there'll be something there for you to listen to, even if you've already heard the interview. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy that. And I hope it will tide everybody over until I've got some proper new episodes for you. But for this week, what I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce the podcast that I do on my Patreon. It's called The Method Guitarist, and it's just a collection of my random musical thoughts that I've had from over the years. I dwell on them, I obsess over them in my own head, and I realized they were starting to drive me crazy, so I figured I should just get them out in some format. So I started them as a blog, and then when the podcast came back last year, and wow, I can't believe it's been a year. It's been a very cool year, and I've really enjoyed getting back into the podcast on a regular basis. So thank you for all the support this last year. But anyway, I decided to start a Patreon, and I figured one perk people would probably want is some sort of Patreon exclusive podcast. And so that's what the Method Guitarist is. There's a few episodes up now at the Patreon, patreon.com/Ret Con Industries. They are available to anybody who subscribes at the $5 or $10 level. And just as a shameless plug, I know it's a financially hard year for everybody. And so, if you're not able to contribute to the Patreon, I get it. And, I totally understand. If you are feeling generous and you want to contribute, I highly suggest doing that. I appreciate it. The money goes towards, all defraying all the different costs associated with this podcast. And as well, I try to make it worth your while. Like I said, there's the bonus podcast. There's some bonus content from different interviews. At the $10 tier, I'm doing a swag bag twice a year. And that will feature probably exclusive music. At least that's what I'm going to do for this current swag bag that's about to go out in the next month or so. Exclusive merch, just, kind of cool little things like that to show that I really appreciate your generosity. And maybe some more additional bonus content that's not available at the $5 tier. I'm still kind of working on that, but it's a work in progress, much like this podcast, much like my life, probably much like your life too. We're doing the best we can in the world, and yeah. So, without further ado, here is episode number 1 of The Method Guitarist. So hi there, this is Greg, and you are listening to the first episode of the Method Guitarist, which is a bonus episode every month for all of you who are my awesome executive producer level patrons through Patreon. So first things first, allow me to just say thank you for supporting what we're doing here at Ret Con Industries. I say we, but it's really just me. But just your generosity is much appreciated and really goes a long way towards helping me kind of develop and build this into something. I've tried doing all sorts of number of things over the years to get momentum going, through the band Balisette, through different YouTube things, through blogs, and I finally feel I have, a strong sense of what I want to do, and I'm hoping that translates into this podcast, the Color of Air podcast, all the new music that I'm working on, all the projects I have kind of in the works. And I just want to thank you for contributing and being an important part of my musical journey. So I guess if you're not aware of me, which I find is probably rare, but just in case, if you just know me as that guy hosting the podcast, my name is Greg Massi. I have been a guitar player for almost 30 years now. I think I got my first guitar in 1991. So yeah, just about 30 years. And in that time, I've really given a lot of thought or lived inside of my own head about thinking about the existential aspects of what I do throughout, my time in Malden of the Well, in Keodot, Balisette, Concilium, Daliad, writing wrestling music. It's all kind of been something I've obsessed over for many, many years. Almost like, I would say, it was like I had this ghost interviewer in my head who was asking me questions as if I was being interviewed for like a magazine or something like that. And so I would be thinking about these answers as if I was really being asked, which, let's be honest, I wasn't. So after a while, I kind of got to the point where I was like, I really have all these thoughts on how I do what I do, and I should just put them out somewhere. And so I started writing a blog called The Method Guitarist, which promptly I fell off of doing. But it's gotten me thinking, and especially with the Patreon now, I'm like, well, why don't I make it an audio thing? That way it's a little bit more direct, hearing my voice as opposed to just reading something I wrote. And I would like to expand upon this. So I'm going to start this off by saying I want this to be interactive. I'm going to talk to you about different things I've thought about, different experiences I've had, and how that kind of made me think about my place in the creative musical world. It's not going to be a strict guitar lesson kind of thing. Primarily because I've always been kind of a bad guitar student myself, and a lot of the technique, knowledge, and things of that I've come to have really come more from goofing around and doing stuff on my own as opposed to what my teachers assigned to me. So the idea of communicating, like how do I do bends? How do I do pull-offs? How do I do this, that, and that, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really interest me. I've tried being a guitar teacher and I was very, very bad at it. So I want this to be more of a mixture of technical stuff as well as philosophical and, thought-provoking kind of stuff about the experience of music and the experience of being a musician. And so I really want you, the listener, to be involved in this process. So I would say if there's a topic you want me to discuss, please pop it in the Patreon comments, or you can email me at retcongreg@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. And just let me know what you're thinking, and we'll talk about it. So I guess I should also explain what I mean when I call this the Method Guitarist. It's something I kind of came up with in one of those times when I was probably way too caffeinated and overthinking everything about life and music, etc. And you hear people talk about method actors, right? You hear about, Daniel Day-Lewis being kind of one of the more prominent ones, where he gets a role and then he immerses himself in the character so much so that by the time he's acting in front of the camera, being this character is second nature to him, so he's able to respond more honestly and give a better performance. And that's kind of an aspect of creativity that I really find kind of intriguing. And so I was trying to explore that in regards to myself, because I was coming to the realization that guitar playing is such a second nature for me now after 30 years. And a lot of times I find myself at a loss for words trying to describe something. Even just sitting here recording this podcast, I'm probably going to edit out a lot of the pauses, but there's the words don't always come to me to express what I'm thinking, to express what I'm feeling. But my fingers don't lie, meaning when I pick up the guitar or any kind of instrument, I guess, which I play with my fingers, but predominantly we're going to talk about guitar here. But when I start playing, there is something bigger happening there. There's something deeper that I'm communicating, and I may not actually be fully aware of it consciously, but it is a hugely important part of what I do. And so I took a step back and I said, all right, well, instead of thinking of this as an acting role, so it's not like I'm creating a character that I'm playing the guitar to or writing music to express. I'm expressing myself. I'm the character. And a lot of times, especially recently, I just find myself trying to discover what is inside me and what I did, which created this character or created me, I guess, for lack of a better term. And this is probably a really terrible explanation of what I mean, but it just means that instead of, say, like learning how to play guitar, like I'll just throw out Kirk Hammett from Metallica. He was a huge influence on me. And obviously there are aspects of him in my performance as a lead guitar player all the time. But, I'm not trying to portray him. I'm trying to portray me. And that this kind of conscious, unconscious, thing, this nebulous personality, ego, experience thing just comes out in my playing. And, it's made me feel more accomplished, frankly, because I've always thought, because I was a terrible student, I always thought I was a sub-rate guitar player. A lot of times, there's times when I really felt I was not good, and I think that's part of the journey. And there's that whole 10,000 hours stuff that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. And, if you tally up all the hours I've spent since 1991 playing guitar, thinking about music, thinking about myself, I mean, I don't even want to know how much time that's occupied in my brain. But this podcast is a way for me to communicate what I've discovered to you, the listener. And like I said, I want you to be interactive because I want to hear your questions or your thoughts on certain things, because it may be completely different than mine, and that's completely valid. So, that's what I'm here to do with this here bonus podcast. And I don't have much for this first one. I'm really trying to make sure I'm on a schedule of getting these things done so I can get this bonus content out to you in a timely fashion, and hopefully you feel the money that you've so generously given to my Patreon is well spent. So I thought what I would do for this first episode is I would also include a couple bonus videos. And these were from the first iteration of this Patreon when I was going to do instrumental guitar stuff, and the bonus material was guitar lessons, video lessons. And I was really happy with the first couple videos I did, which is me explaining my approach to alternate tunings. And so I think that is something that's become very much a part of my musical identity. It's changed a lot of how I approach guitar and what I think about. And so I feel like that's as good a place as I need to start with this. So please click on the videos that are going to be in this post as well, and check out my thoughts on alternate tunings. So I'll leave it at that for now. And like I said, just feel free to communicate. Let me know what you're thinking. And let's see where we can take this podcast and see what I can maybe learn and discover about myself. And hopefully maybe give you, the listener, some ideas that will help you learn and discover things about yourselves as musicians, if you're a musician, or even as a music listener. I don't think it should be limited just to instrumentalists or vocalists or anything like that. I think anybody should be able to listen to this podcast and get something out of it, which they can then approach to their musical journey, their musical life, whatever form that may take. So that's the goal. And again, I want to thank you, my executive producer patrons, for making this possible, for helping me take this further, and I will be eternally grateful. So thank you, and see you next month.